How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be a video that I'm doing with my 5 fellow grumpy old gentlemen, grumpy old guys, and we have a little sort of like a subgroup on YouTube here. And anyway, the guys in the past week or so, they were all doing their top 5 or top 10 Christmas movies, and I've been kind of under the weather for about the last week or so, and I haven't had a chance to take part until now. So let me do something just a little bit different, since Christmas is really not my favorite time of year. But I'd like to do 5 films, not necessarily, well, okay, top 5 films. Films that are not exactly what you would classify as Christmas movies, but they have Christmas in the story, or they take place on Christmas. So if that makes any sense whatsoever. So my top 5 sort of Christmas movies, but not really. Anyway, starting off with this blank box, right? Okay, there is a DVD in here. This is a movie that I bought from one of my online sources that prints out films either from television or from VHS, films that have not been commercially released as yet on DVD or Blu-ray. So it was a film I wanted to see, and I was happy to get it in any form I could. So I don't know if you can see that. It's very hard to see. This is a 1944 dramatic film released at Universal, by Universal, called Christmas Holiday, starring Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly. Now, Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly were two of the biggest musical stars of the 1940s. Deanna Durbin had been around since 1936. She had become a star overnight when she was only 15 years old. Gene Kelly, by 1944, had been in a few dramatic films and also a couple of big musicals like For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland. That was his film debut. And he also did CoverGirl with Rita Hayworth over at Columbia. So he was getting a reputation of being a great dancer, great song and dance man. So you might think, if you were a moviegoer in 1944 and you saw a movie with that title, with these two musical stars, it would be a lighthearted Christmas musical, right? And you would be dead wrong. It was based on a story, a novel of the same title by W. Somerset Maugham, who was not necessarily known for writing lighthearted Christmas stories, but in his very dramatic film, made in the film noir style, directed by Robert Siodmak, and it provided a change of pace for Deanna Durbin, who had been making really very popular lighthearted films with her beautiful operatic voice and her beautiful personality. For so many years. She had been Universal's top star for a long time, and she wanted to do something a little bit different. So the studio bought this story for her, made a lot of changes to kind of soften the details of the story. I've never read the book, but I know some things about it. Anyway, it has to do with a young woman named Jackie Lamont, played by Deanna Durbin, whose life has taken a very dark and dramatic turn when the man that she fell in love with and got married to, played by Gene Kelly, turned out to have a very dark side, a weakness for gambling and a weakness, an attraction toward violence, and ended up being sent to prison for murder. And as a result, she too has her life being ruined. She decides to take a job as a nightclub hostess and singer in a place outside of New Orleans, which in the book, it was a brothel, right? She was a prostitute. But in the movie, they make it into a nightclub that's kind of shady. It's described as being one of those joints. And she is described as being a hostess, and she also sings. Deanna Durbin gets to sing 2 songs in the film, does it very well. So the whatever else is in her job description is not necessarily explicit, but she has a very dark, dramatic life. So the gist of the story is that she meets a young military man on Christmas Eve who comes to the brothel. And she asks him, of all things, to take her to the Christmas midnight mass at St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans. And they go, and she is so overwhelmed by the mass that she starts weeping. And that inspires her to tell her story to this man. And the story of what happens to her and what happens with her marriage is told in flashback while they sit in a diner. And then the conclusion of the film, the climax, actually takes place later on Christmas night. And it's a very good film. It has a lot of flaws in it, at least I think it does, but it's very well acted by everybody concerned. And Deanna Durbin does a good job, even though she never got another chance to do another dramatic film. As well, no, she never did a dramatic film after this. She played musicals till the end of her career, which was about 4 or 5 years later when she finally walked away from films. But the Midnight Mass is an actual mass that was filmed at the St. Vibiana Cathedral in Los Angeles, the old cathedral in Los Angeles, which is now a restaurant, by the way. And it's very beautiful, and it's kind of nice to see that authentic. They only show a few parts of it, but it's nice to see the way things used to be. And it's a very interesting film, and I'm highly recommended for anybody who is curious about Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly, and also about the film noir style. Next up is a film from 1934. This is Bright Eyes, starring Shirley Temple, probably one of her most beloved films. This is the one where she sang On the Good Ship Lollipop. Now, this part of the film takes place on Christmas. Little Shirley is the daughter of a woman who is a widow, and she's working as a cook and a housekeeper for this very rich family they also have a little girl of their own who is a holy terror, played by another child star who's making her star debut in this film, a young actress named Jane Withers, who is the exact opposite of Shirley Temple, where Shirley is sickeningly sweet. No, we all love Shirley Temple. Jane was mean and nasty and shouting and screaming and kicking, and she tries to run over sweet Shirley with a tricycle, all sorts of things. And there's a great scene where it shows Christmas morning where this rich couple has this beautifully decorated Christmas tree and 4,000 presents under the tree for their daughter, and she's with a scowl on her face. She's tearing them open one by one and screaming and throwing stuff around and acting like a perfect brat. So in a way, the film is memorable for a lot of things, but for me, it's always been memorable because the character played by Jane Withers was so vivid and so refreshing in a way. And she became a star overnight after this. She was almost as big a star as Shirley Temple for the rest of the 1930s and into the 40s. Also, next up is another comedy. It's called Christmas in Connecticut, starring, let's see, Barbara Stanwyck, Dennis Morgan, Sidney Greenstreet, who had been in the Maltese Falcon. He gets to play funny in this one. Now, this is a very funny movie about, let's see, Barbara Stanwyck plays a woman named Elizabeth Lane, who is a very successful writer for a woman's magazine called Smart Housekeeping. And she writes in the persona of a woman who is a wife and mother and a accomplished cook and housekeeper and decorator, when in reality she is none of those things. She's not married, she doesn't have any kids, she lives in a city apartment, and she can't cook, she can't even make coffee. So she's living a total lie. Her editor doesn't know that, but her friends do. And anyway, the convoluted plot gets us to the point where she is asked to host a young military hero played by Dennis Morgan, who wants to know what it's like to experience Christmas with that's not really, it's not that he wants to, it's just somebody writes a letter from his military hospital where he's recovering, and they want him to have a chance to experience Christmas with this family on her farm, right? Which she doesn't own a farm. So the editor who gets the the editor gets the letter. Yeah, right. I'm sorry. I've been sick for a week. I'm not quite here. The editor gets the letter, and thinking that Elizabeth Lane is what she says she is, he thinks, wow, this is great. It's going to be great for circulation and lots of money. So he tells her, you've got to do this. Well, so she has to come up with a farm, a husband, and a baby, and learn how to cook in very short order, and it's very funny. Barbara Stanwyck can do anything, whether it's dramatic or comedy, it doesn't matter. She's wonderful. Okay, next up is a great musical called Holiday Inn. Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, and a young actress named Virginia Dale. They have this song and dance group where, and they're very popular, stage group, and they're about to split up because Bing Crosby thinks that Virginia Dale is going to marry him and go off with him to live on this farm that he has out in the country someplace and leave show business. What he doesn't know is she has changed her mind and she's in love with Fred Astaire and wants to stay in show business. So the act breaks up. He goes out on the farm, and after spending half of his life getting this place fixed up, he decides to open up something called the Holiday Inn, a restaurant and nightclub which will only be open on holidays like Christmas and Easter, Abraham Lincoln's birthday, Halloween, all this stuff. So that's what happens, and it gives us a chance to see several musical numbers by all the music written by Irving Berlin. We get to hear famous songs like Easter Parade and White Christmas, and a lot of other songs that are not as well known. And the other actress, actually the leading actress involved in this, is a young Paramount contract player named Marjorie Reynolds, who was very, very good. And unfortunately, she never became a big name star, but she's very good in this. And it's great to see Astaire and Crosby together, and yeah, great movie. The only drawback to this film is that one of the musical numbers takes place on Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and they do another Irving Berlin song called Abraham, which is a real dramatic song about how Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, right? Which means that everybody in the cast, Astaire, Rogers, Reynolds, they do it in blackface, and even the actress Louise Beavers, who plays the housekeeper of the Holiday Inn, she has to join in and sing with this song and sing these really demeaning lyrics about, using the word darky and all kinds of things. It's cringeworthy. And as far as I'm concerned, the movie would be better off if they just took out this number forever and threw it in the trash heap where it belongs. I know, history, different time, I got it. Now, next up is one of the best musicals of all time. This is Meet Me in St. Louis, 1944, directed by Vincent Minnelli at MGM. Judy Garland, Margaret O'Brien, just a great movie about a family in St. Louis in the early 1900s, a year in their life, just their normal everyday activities and family squabbles and romances and all sorts of things, leading up to the opening of the World's Fair in St. Louis in, I guess it was 1903 or 1904, I'm not sure which, and it's just a beautiful movie. Judy Garland really, she's never even been better than she was in this movie. And to think that when it started, she was very unhappy making it. She didn't understand what Vincent Minnelli wanted, but it's just turned out so beautifully. She gets to sing songs like "The Boy Next Door" and the Trolley Song, and finally, where it ties in with Christmas, which is the climax of the film takes place in Christmas, and she sings the song "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" to Margaret O'Brien, who plays her little sister. And it's very sad because the family has found out that the father, played by Leon Ames, is taking a new job in New York City. So they all have to leave St. Louis, and none of them want to do it. They're all brokenhearted at the fact that they have to leave. So she has to sing this song to little Margaret O'Brien, who is just an expert at bringing, both Judy Garland and Margaret O'Brien can just make you cry when they sing or when they act or do anything, just looking at them. So the two of them together is just, if you don't cry during the scene a little bit, then you have a cold heart. So Meet Me in St. Louis, beautiful song, beautiful scene with Judy Garland and Margaret O'Brien. So Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching, and yeah, Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon.